What's going on, guys? I wanted to discuss this article here from NBC, so we'll just get right into it. The headline here says, Trump has privately shown serious interest in U.S. ground troops in Iran. The president's private comments have not focused on a large-scale ground invasion of Iran, but rather on the idea of a small contingent of U.S. troops that would be used for specific strategic purposes, sources say. So again, just jumping right into this here. And by the way, if you guys want to see more of this content, be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, all that stuff. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to donate to the channel. Really appreciate it. But yeah, we'll get right into this. So this is from March 6th at 5:53 p.m. Eastern Time by Courtney Kube, Catherine Doyle, Julie Sirkin, and Gordon Lebald. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing those names. And just want to give credit there. So again, this is from NBC. Let's get right into this. Washington. President Donald Trump has privately expressed serious interest in deploying U.S. troops on the ground inside of Iran. According to two U.S. officials, a former U.S. official, and another person with knowledge of the conversations. So, obviously, my first thought here would be, why? Why do you need to do this? Secondly, my thought is, how is this going to land with the American people? I feel like I've seen a little bit of mixed things with the polls somewhat. I saw something that was like about half. I saw another thing, I think that was like 56-44 or something like that, which is like kind of around half. And I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly. But obviously those are like two huge factors and things that come to mind for me of like, why is this happening? And how is this going to affect Trump moving forward? So continuing with that thought too, if this gets to the point, if it's not there already, and like I said, if I'm missing some other poll or the majority of polls say something that different from what I just said, but if it gets to the point, where Trump is just absolutely hated on this issue, yet he continues to do it, that's going to make me skeptical of like, wait a second, why would you keep doing something that you absolutely know is unpopular? And the main two reasons that come to the top of my head is like, you have a really strong moral conviction that you need to do it, right? Because just because something is popular or is unpopular doesn't necessarily influence whether you should do it or not. Now, I'm not saying that's either of them is the case here. I'm just saying in general. But it does make me concerned if it gets to the point where it's like very obviously unpopular, again, if not there already, why is Trump doing that? And then I think, okay, is Trump going to try to screw with the elections? And that's just to be clear, it's not something I just think about Trump. That'd be across the board thing. If anybody's doing something that's that unpopular, that should be a red flag. I also think I've seen headlines kind of on both sides of this, if I'm remembering correctly, where, Trump said something about nationalizing elections, but then I feel like I remember him saying something about like he's not considering something serious about that. Very shady memory there. But let me know what I'm missing there. Link me articles, link me polls, link me anything you think would be useful for this conversation. But so we'll continue here. Trump has discussed the idea of deploying ground troops with aides and Republican officials outside the White House while outlining his vision for a post-war Iran in which Iran's uranium is secure and the U.S. and the new Iranian regime cooperate on oil production similar to how the U.S. and Venezuela are, the sources said. So when reading this made me think of like, okay, let's say hypothetically all this shit works, right? All this shit works. The oil's secure. They're coupling on oil production. There's a huge red flag for me of like, okay, well, what happens if we try to go to like renewable sources? What's going to be the purpose of doing all this oil? Is it going to like come to fruition in some different way? Are we going to be then like sort of pipelined into needing to do this type of production because we're relying so heavy on it? That would be the first thing that would come to mind for me. And then continuing on here, didn't scroll too far. The president's comments expressing serious interest in deploying ground troops have not focused on a large-scale ground invasion of Iran, but rather on the idea of a small contingent of U.S. troops that would be used for specific strategic purposes. The U.S. officials, the former U.S. official, and the person with knowledge of the discussion said. They said Trump has not made any decisions or given any orders related to ground troops. Quote, this story is based on assumptions from anonymous sources who are not part of the president's national security team and are clearly not read into these discussions, end quote, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said in a statement. Quote, President Trump always wisely keeps all options open, but anyone trying to insinuate he's in favor of one option or another proves they have no real seat at the table, end quote. So a couple things here. Firstly, I think the small contingent aspect of this is interesting because that makes me think of spec ops. And we're going to get to that in a second because there's a part of this whole like spec ops conversation. And again, I think it might come up again later in this article that has a lot to do potentially with the strike. I think it was on or near the school or whatever it was. But first, obviously there's some pushback here by Leavitt. I think it makes sense for her to push back on this to some degree, right? Because you wouldn't want everybody knowing exactly what your plan is. You wouldn't want everybody knowing like, yeah, this is exactly what we're going to do. There also might be a little bit of like her playing like a little bit of defense of like thinking maybe the American people don't like this, so we should be a little iffy on our statements just in case we need to pull back from it. And then we can say, no, this was never confirmed that we were going to do this, whatever it might be. But yeah, continuing here. And again, we'll get back to the spec ops thing in a second, because I think that's potentially a really important thing here. Now, I don't have a military background, so if I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments. But yeah, we'll continue here. So publicly, Trump has not ruled out putting U.S., quote, boots on the ground, end quote, in Iran, though the war has so far consisted only of an air campaign. His private discussions about the idea show a president perhaps more willing to consider taking such a step than his public comments on the issue so far have suggested. Any deployment of American troops inside of Iran can increase the scale and scope of the war and escalate the risk to American forces. So again, seeing shit like this escalate the risks to American forces, I would imagine the more and more this shit happens, the more Trump's polls are going to tank. I mean, I don't see how I feel like you'd have to really sell like, no, this is worth it. If you're going to have high numbers of American casualties. Now, maybe I'm wrong about that. I hope I don't know. I mean, I guess in theory, maybe we're in some kind of like new era where that could be sold more. Maybe there's something I'm missing to this, but if I had to bet, I would definitely bet the more American forces die, the less popular the actions of whatever is causing them to die become. So since the war began on Saturday, 6 U.S. service members have been killed and 18 wounded in counterattacks from Iran, according to the Pentagon. Trump has privately described to aides and Republican officials outside the White House that his ideal outcome in Iran is one like the emerging dynamic between the U.S. and Venezuela since American special forces captured Nicolas Maduro in January, the current U.S. officials and former U.S. official said. In post-Maduro Venezuela, the U.S. backed a new president, Delcy Rodriguez, under the condition that she implement policies that Trump views as favorable to the U.S., including that the U.S. benefits from Venezuela's oil production. Again, there's a concern here that, like, are we shoehorning ourselves into needing oil? That is something that I am definitely concerned about. Continuing on here, the president said in an interview with the New York Post this week, quote, I don't have the yips with respect to boots on the ground, end quote. He said, while other presidents have ruled out boots on the ground, quote, I say probably don't need them, or if they were necessary, end quote. Now, there's a lot of like quotes within quotes there, and they added a word, so if you're going to read exactly what was said and how it was put together, I encourage you to do so. Now, again, this could be a thing also of like Trump not wanting to fully play his cards, Trump wanting to keep things a little mysterious, so that could be an aspect of this. But continuing here, foreign policy experts offered various scenarios in which the president might choose to deploy U.S. troops on the ground in Iran. Quote, you can envision them doing some sort of special operations insertions. I don't exactly know what insertions means there. Does that mean just like going in? I don't know. Quote, you can envision them doing some sort of special operations insertions if there were targets that they absolutely needed to take out or reduce but didn't lend themselves to bombardment, end quote, said Joel Rayburn, a former Trump administration official and senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, a Washington, D.C. based think tank. Quote, that's the kind of thing where you do an insertion, you attack a target or conduct a raid, and then you get out, end quote. So again, this is what I wanted to go back to earlier with this whole spec ops things. I don't understand why this has not been a thing for the military strike on that school that killed children, right? Because according to this other thing I'm looking at on the site, you guys can't see this, but what I'm quickly reading from CNN, assuming this little snippet of this article is true, that strike killed children. And then I don't know if that's from the U.S., from Israel. I haven't looked into it. I think I saw some headlines that it looks like it was like mostly from us or could have been from us. I don't know. I've seen a couple things, but regardless, again, I'm not military, but is this not like the perfect time to use some kind of special operations where you go in there and you're real precise so you can avoid killing children? I don't understand what exactly is required to say, yeah, there's kids in there, but we're still going to bomb it. That's still going to happen. I don't get it. I cannot fathom. Now, even with something this crazy, I'm willing to admit, I'm not military, okay? If there's something wrong about this, please tell me. But goddamn, does it look really fucking bad when you're bombing things and killing children? Now, again, I don't know if it's confirmed that we did that or not. Still something I need to look into. But whatever the case, if we're going to be doing this stuff, United States, Israel, anyone, any military across the world, obviously, children, civilian casualties have got to be reduced as much as possible. Now, what exactly that means, I don't know. But again, huge red flag. All right, and then continuing here, but Rayburn said such scenario is very different from what most Americans imagine when they think about deploying ground troops or putting, quote, boots on the ground, end quote, and that he had so far not seen the conditions emerging that would require that step. Okay, so again, we're going back to like, what is this going to look like for the voter? How is this going to be sold to the voter? How popular or unpopular is this going to be? All that kind of stuff. Again, if I had to bet, I would be willing to bet the more U.S. troops die or are put at risk of dying, the less popular it's going to become. Behnam Ben Taleblu, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, the Iran program senior director at the Washington, D.C. based think tank Foundation for Defense of Democracies, said in the event of collapse of the Iranian regime, U.S. forces could be used on the ground there to try to help facilitate a dynamic between the U.S. and Iran that mirrors Venezuela, or to help keep track of Iran's uranium stockpile, which is believed to be entombed beneath some of its nuclear sites. I mean, I just want to say really quickly on this, if they go down there and they don't find uranium, there is going to be people who, when I say down there, I mean like they says entombed beneath some of its nuclear sites. If it's not entombed there and they don't find any, there's going to be people all over the place saying it's Iraq again. Here it is again. Now, I really wasn't all that politically invested when that happened. So, you know, I don't know a ton about like the details of that, but I know for sure the people that have been invested in that experienced all that kind of stuff, they are going to for sure, with almost certainty, going to point to this as like, here we fucking go again. Quote, you don't want it to become a failed state nuclear bazaar, end quote, Taleblu said of Iran. A couple of things there. One, if I've been saying nuclear wrong, or nuclear, or whatever it is, my apologies. Secondly, I don't know what a bazaar is. I've never heard of that word. But anyway, continuing here. Nate Swanson, a senior fellow and director of the Iran Strategy Project at the Atlantic Council think tank in Washington, D.C., said the U.S. could rethink its military operations if Iran, quote, thinks it can win a war of attrition, end quote. Such a scenario could lead the president to deploy ground forces into Iran or arm opponents of the Iranian regime. Now, my understanding of it was from like just the headline of it that either Trump was considering or did arm, was it the Houthis? Do I have that correct? Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And then the last sentence here, Trump is considering whether to arm opponents of the regime. In an interview, did I scroll too far? Nope. In an interview with NBC News on Thursday, Trump suggested he is not seriously considering a ground invasion of Iran at this time. He said he wants new leadership in Iran that he approves of, and has said he expects the war, which began Saturday, to last 4 to 5 weeks while leaving open the possibility of it continuing indefinitely. So this part right here, continuing indefinitely, again, that that if that happens, I cannot see a world where this is approved of, especially if the American troops, the casualties of those numbers go up. I can't see a world where that's popular. I just can't. And again, you have to keep in mind the skepticism of like, okay, if this becomes vastly unpopular, why would you keep doing it? Why? Unless you have such a strong principle that you think is right. You have such a strong principle that you think the American people are going to see the benefits of this and then like you in the end. There's got to be a skepticism of like, oh, you're doing something unpopular, even though it hurts you in the polls, hypothetically, because you actually don't want to have a fair election. You're actually going to do anything you can to keep your party in power. Again, something to read up on more. I haven't read up on that specifically, but I've heard headlines. As of right now, definitely a huge red flag. Leavitt said Wednesday that U.S. ground troops are an option that remains on the table for the president, although, quote, not part of the plan for this operation time, end quote. I don't know exactly what that means when they say not part of the plan for this operation time. Does that mean like not for the 4 to 5 week timeline laid out up here? I'm not exactly sure what that means. But, and again, they're probably going to try to keep this private in some way, shape, or form. So there's that part of it. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, again, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, told NBC News' Tom Yamas, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, on Thursday, that Iran is prepared for U.S. ground troops. Quote, we are waiting for them, end quote, Araghchi said, adding that, quote, we are confident that we can confront them, and that would be a big disaster for them, end quote. Quote, we have prepared ourselves to confront with any scenario, end quote. Araghchi, again, however I'm saying that, Araghchi said. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. But look, guys, I mean, look, this is, again, a lot to look at here. Definitely some red flags in there. What is this going to look like moving forward? Troops on the ground, what exactly is that going to mean? And the special operations thing, you know, why is it that, again, if it is the case that the U.S. bombed the school, why is it the case that we're not doing spec ops for something like that? Like, I just cannot comprehend that. I cannot comprehend it. And the thing is, too, just from like a peripheral standpoint, even if you can come up with a military explanation, I remain really skeptical of like, how can you sell that to the American people? Do you guys think that's something that can be sold? Do you think there is some sort of like American patriotism of like, well, we had to get the bad guys that people would believe in, even if it took killing children? I don't know. But again, I appreciate you guys checking in for this. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.